We first off, we just appreciate you guys making the trek out here to join us for the panel. I think the first question I'd like to ask you guys is just tell us a little about your story. We could start with you, Randy, since you're the closest. So how did you get into real estate, and then what was your first real estate investment venture?
I bought my first rental properties before I was a realtor. So in the late 80s, I think it was, the early 90s, there was a couple things that happened in our economy. Two companies filed bankruptcy that were huge, and at the time, they were probably like Amazon and Google at the time. And one was called Enron, and one was called WorldCom. Most of you are too young for all that, but what happened was people could have worked for that company 30, 40 years, and when they filed bankruptcy, their pensions were wiped out. So here you could have worked for a company for 40 years, and now you have nothing. So after they fined them and sent some to jail, Congress implemented some rules that protect pensions now. So that happened after a few years. Congress is a little slow at stuff. But watching that, and then at the same time, there were commercials on TV, like infomercials. How to buy real estate, no money down. Yes, you too can do this. And so I started thinking, if I work for another company, what protection do I have that I'm going to have some retirement income? So to me, watching those videos kind of sparked my interest in buying rental properties. So I bought the tapes on TV from one of the most trusted guys. I did my research, and we bought the tapes on TV. We were tenants. My wife, Chris, and I couldn't have done this without her. We bought a fourplex that we owner-occupied. So when you do that, owner-occupy a rental property, 4 units or less, you can get an FHA loan, 3.5% down. At the time, if you were an investor, you had to have 30% down. Well, we were kind of poor at the time, so we owner-occupied that fourplex, and that got us our first property. And then I bought my second property maybe 18 months later, and it had a VA loan on it, and it was a duplex. So we assumed the VA loan, and the difference then, banks wouldn't loan you 100% on anything. So there was, to make up that 20%, they did an equity line, and I had my dad co-sign. With my dad's signature, that gave us 100% purchasing power. And they guaranteed that if we made the payments on time for 12 months, they'd take my dad off. So in essence, I was just borrowing his signature for like a year. So then after that second one, I started taking the real estate classes at Ames. Not really to be a realtor, I never really thought about it. It was more to have the contractual knowledge, and all that goes along with that was why I took the classes at Ames and ended up getting my license. So I bought 2 properties before I was a licensed realtor. So that's how I got started.
In the current marketplace that we're in right now, you mentioned creative financing on that second one. Do you see that coming back in the world that we live in right now with where interest rates are?
I think, I guess lenders would have to speak with what kind of creative financing out there, but there's always private money too, but you're going to have a higher interest rate. I would bet right now today, private money is going to be about 10%. So you've just got to make sure the numbers work. Here's how much income I'm going to get from the tenants. Here's my expenses. And so you just got to figure that all out. But I think it's going to be harder and harder for some homeowners with the prices and the interest rates with what they are. So I think the creative financing might have to come from parents or a family member, or you borrow dad's signature. I think that's where some of that creative financing might come from.
Thank you, Randy. Arthur, after listening to your story that you've shared on social media and you growing up in Gary, Indiana, and talking about the hardships that you faced growing up, can you just tell us a little bit about how you persevered through everything you've experienced in life at such a young age and how you become so successful? You're a pillar in the Denver area and the Denver market, and I know a lot of people look up to you. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Thank you, sir. So how many of you guys have ever heard of Gary, Indiana? By raise of hands. All right. So that's where Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, right? Well, we hear about the Jackson 5, but it wasn't like that with me growing up. I grew up in subsidized housing, which is basically better known as the projects. Single mom, 3 kids, tough. I remember when we first moved into the projects, I was fighting every day. And you got to understand one thing, when you're in the projects, it's not a family of, 3 or 2. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10 kids that you're going up against each and every day. And at that point in my life, mom raising us, she eventually got married. That gentleman, he sexually abused my sister for like 9 years. And I didn't know any of this that was going on. And the point and what I'm trying to say is that when I look back on that situation, it allowed me to grow as a young man because I was the oldest one out of all my siblings. And as I went into high school, and this is the thing that you guys got to understand, My neighborhood, my high school, Gary Lou Wallace. There was a young lady. She was 15 years old. Her name was Paula Cooper. She was the youngest female to ever be convicted to death row. She killed a Bible school lady, 70 years old, with an ice pick. Her and her friend one day in lunch hour went there and killed that lady. And I had another friend. Paula actually wasn't my friend. She went to school with me. But one of my best friends, he was called the toll gate killer. He killed 5 people. He was sentenced to death. Now he's on life. He's life. Another one of my friends, he's life. He killed his girlfriend. And what I'm trying to get at, guys, this is what makes me different. It makes me mentally strong. It self-motivates me because all that was around me. My focus was just going to school. And I didn't know I really wanted to go to college until I was a senior. I had offers to play football in college. I had offers to run track. But one of my best friends talked me into going to ITT Technical Institute. You guys ever heard of that place? I got accepted to Purdue University, right? So he talked to me going to ITT, and within 3 months, I'm like, what the hell did I just do? Oh my God. But I was 18 years old, and I knew I couldn't ask my mom for money. So I was working 3 jobs, Taco Bell, Target, and McDonald's. I was getting 3 hours of sleep a day. And one day I prayed to God. I said, if you could get me out of this situation, I don't know how I could possibly repay you. And then probably within a week later, one of my good friends who ran track with me in high school talked to me into going to Ball State, and I got a scholarship to run track at Ball State. Fast forward, graduated from college, moved to Colorado. I only graduated guys with a 2.4 GPA in high school and in college. Let me say that again, 2.4 GPA. And one thing I stress to a lot of young people is that GPA does not define who you are in life. Test scores do not define who you are in life. And I made it a point that that was not going to define who I was moving forward. And I remember my first job that I got was at Wells Fargo, which is now Norwest, which is now Wells Fargo. And I had to go through an employment agency to get my first job. And I remember the first place I interviewed was in Aurora. Second place was in Arvada. Third place was in Fort Collins. And the last place, Wyoming. I didn't know where the hell Wyoming was at, but I just know I was there. And I remember the guy telling me you needed a 3.0 to interview and get the job. Possibly I had a 2.4. I killed it, got the job, got into the business. I knew I wanted to get into finance, right? And I'm going to move it up because my story is long, but to cut it straight to the point, I wanted to get in the mortgage business. And I remember I used to call this area manager every freaking week. He would always blow me off, Arthur, you just don't have enough experience. And then one day he called me. I'm like, oh, interesting. And he called me. I went to his office. He said, you know what? We're opening up an office in Mount Bello. I knew exactly what was going on, guys. Mount Bello was predominantly black back then, and he needed a black face to fit into that position. I was no dummy, but you know what? That was my opportunity to get my foot through the door and take advantage of it. And moving forward, the rest is kind of history. I'll cut it off, and we'll get more into it a little bit later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Arthur. We really appreciate you sharing your story, man. Next, Michelle, Adrian, listening to your guys' podcast. If you guys haven't listened to it or even researched them a little bit, you can find them on Spotify, Apple. But in their first episode, Michelle and Adrian talk about their story and how Michelle had pushed Adrian to get into real estate. So Michelle, if you could start first and then talk about how you pushed him, and then Adrian just follow up with the empire that you guys have built so far.
Sure. That's why she's up here.
Yeah, he dragged me up here. So I guess I kind of got into real estate pretty young. When I was 18, I bought my first house because I was like, I don't want to rent. I heard somebody talking about, paying a mortgage versus renting. So first thing I did is bought a house. I don't even think my parents owned a house. They rented. So I was like, I'm going to buy a house. So I bought a house. Then I started doing hair, and I wanted to learn more about investing because I'm like, when I retire, I didn't know what kind of retirement there was. So I really got into rentals. So then I bought my first rental. This was probably a few years of doing hair. Then I bought another rental. Then I bought a fourplex. I did the whole lived in one unit and rented 4 out. And then right around that time is when I met Adrian, and he was flipping cars, selling cars, flipping cars, and pretty much I'll let him go from there.
Yeah, so before I met Michelle, I kind of had I guess, my background's a little bit different. So I was born in the Philippines, and then I came to the U.S. 2004, and we moved straight to. My mom came, picked us up in the Philippines, and then I moved to Cali in 2004. Had no idea how to speak English, so am I doing good? Do I have an accent? Literally, all my life, I'm like, do I have an accent? But it's just because, like, in California, if you're new, you get picked on for like having an accent or like, I'm bilingual, I'm Filipino, and but anyway, so 2004, my parents weren't very, that we didn't really have much, so we just kept moving. We ended up moving to like Colorado, Arizona, and then we ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, because there was no jobs for my dad. He was a contractor. I don't know if he was just saying that, but he kept saying we don't have a job, so we just kept moving, and then we found Wyoming. So yeah, and then I moved to Wyoming in 2012. I graduated high school in 2012, and in high school I started flipping cars. My brother bought me my first car, which was like a $2,000 Cadillac DeVille, that I had like flipped. I think I flipped like 15 cars in high school. And by the end of my senior year, I was driving a brand new Mustang. And then, but anyway, so then I got into the car business, which then led me into flipping more cars on the side. And then I had met her. She was driving a Benz, and I was like, damn, that girl was fine. And then I was in a BMW M6, which I'm really proud of that time of my life because I was, I didn't really have much. When I grew up, I didn't have much. So yeah, I had met her, and I'm like, this is the one. Like, and then I was still flipping cars, and then I was doing that full time. I quit the car dealership selling cars, and then I met her, and then she convinced me. She was like, hey, let's start flipping houses. She sold her fourplex, or was it the fourplex?
Yeah.
She sold that fourplex, took the equity, and then I sold my first house that I had bought when I was 22. I sold that, and then we kind of just put the funds together. And then now here we are, 150 houses we flipped together. I bought her a last salon and the first one. I didn't buy it for her, but we partnered up on it. I remodeled it. We bought it with hard money. I rehabbed it for her. She told me all the designs. She was like, here's what I want my salon to look like. And then we just refinanced that too out of there. And yeah, here we are. So it's kind of crazy story, but yeah, 29 years old. Crazy.
Hey, I just want to say those are some pretty awesome stories. I didn't buy my first property till I was 31 or 32. So congratulations to you guys for getting an early start.
Man, that's crazy. So I listened to the podcast about you talking about your first flip and how you realized that there was some land that you could subdivide off. And you guys made, what, 75 grand on that first flip?
Yep.
Which is awesome, man. So give them a round of applause for being so intuitive with that.
Thank you, guys.
So like I mentioned when I was introducing them, majority of them up here own rentals. I know that Adrian and Randy, they both own some in and out of state, in and out of Colorado, Wyoming, and then also in Arizona. Can you guys talk about the differences of investing in your home state versus out of state? Is there any benefits to it from what you've seen? I know for you it's a second residence, but anything you could touch on that?
I thought I would never own a rental property outside of Greeley. I love babysitting my properties. If I'm driving across town, one way or the other, I'm driving by my fourplexes. I want to make sure there's not tires stacked on the front porch. I don't want a car in the yard. I mean, I've about seen it all, but I want my places to look good. So I do babysit mine. So we bought a rental 7-8 years ago down in Phoenix because I've got family down there that all went from Greeley to there. And my 91-year-old dad's down there doing awesome. And, at some point we got to get down there. But so it's been a rental for 8 years. So we've got a great tenant in there. But here's the difference. I have all of my contractors I've had for 25 years here. Tenant calls me and says, hey, the switch isn't working in the kitchen. I've learned to go first on some of this and then realize it's just a light bulb that they didn't change before I call the $100 an hour electricity. And I have contractors that I trust. The bad thing about owning that one in Phoenix, I have no control over it. It's the only one, well, sort of the only one that I have a property manager. And so they're not going to babysit your property like you do. So there's repairmen that go, and then I get a bill and I'm like, really? That would have been half as much here, you know? So it's just hard to control when it's out of state. So you're at the mercy of your property manager. So.
Adrian, Michelle, can you guys talk about short-term rentals versus long-term? I know you guys have a few Airbnb properties, one in Scottsdale, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I don't know if you want to.
You
Do you want to get into the short term or long term?
You can do this, or I don't care.
Well, how do you feel about the short term and long term? Because
I mean, pretty much exactly like him.
I'm afraid of it.
Yeah, we are short-term rentals in Arizona. We have a guy that rents it, and we try to go there all the time. But every time we go, like, it's not taken care of as much as we would take care of it. Like the yard kind of looks junky and things that we would never let happen. But it's so nice because I've lived in Wyoming my whole life, so it's nice to be able to go to Arizona when we want and just reserve the days from Airbnb. But when we first did it, I was making a lot of money. Probably my biggest investment was the Airbnb in Arizona, but last year it's really went down. So now we're not even breaking even. But we do get to go there once a month and stay when we want. And we're into the supercars, so we have a car down there and we'll be able to drive it in the winter. So the Airbnb in Arizona is more for our leisure than an actual investment. And maybe when we retire one day, we'll have a house paid off down there. So
that's good.
Arthur, like I had mentioned, you're a big advocate for the Hispanic community, and you talking about going to Montbello and that being your first introduction into lending here in Colorado. Can you talk about why us Hispanics are a big proponent of your business?
Absolutely. When I got into business back in '96, as I said earlier, I only knew two other loan officers who looked like me. I can remember their names to this day, Betty Gator and Cameron Winchester. And to top that off, there were no Hispanic lenders at all, zero. And some of these people that are in the room, they probably remember Carlos Del Rio, Bernardo Del Rio, those guys, Moore and company. And for me, let's keep it real, guys. Hispanics and blacks have been disenfranchised for years when it comes to real estate, when it comes to finance, when it comes to anything and everything that has to do with growing wealth. And my goal is to close that wealth gap. And I am so passionate because, I look at blacks and Hispanics almost identical when it comes to culture, when it comes to hanging out with family. I could tell you everything about a Hispanic loan with my eyes closed, from cash on hand in the mattress, in the glove compartment. We could talk about 5 jobs in 6 months. How do I make that deal work? We could talk about gift money. I mean, we could talk about it all. And it's not just Hispanics, it's the black community too as well. So for me, Kristen, to answer your question, I think back to when I was growing up. My number one game I love was Monopoly, right? And I own about 9 properties myself. My first one was when I was 25. But for me, that to walk into that room, and back in those days, the kids used to have to interpret for the parents because the parents didn't speak any English. The kids would actually help me take the loan application. And I look around this room now, I'm pretty sure we're way past that now, right, guys? Kids are not taking loan outs for parents anymore. You got loan officers that look like the parents, talk like the parents. So for me, that's what I pride myself in. So thank you.
Thank you. So question for all of you guys is, you guys have impressive portfolios. How did you guys, after that first domino fell, how did you just keep accumulating properties? Did you guys use traditional financing? How many of them did you live in and occupy and just keep moving up? What's your story and your journey from first to the next? I know Brandy, you talked about it a little bit.
I think when we went from the first one and owner occupied it to the second one was about 18 months, but it was 100% financing, so nothing out of our pocket. And then I got my license. So my actual first deal in real estate, I bought the house that was listed from the teacher I had at Ames, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get my contract back with all these red marks. But we bought the house, and it had 2 basement apartments just north of Greeley Central, which was really cool. That made 3/4 of the mortgage, having 2 basement apartments. So once again, it was no owner-occupied property. Lived in it for, I don't know, a couple of years, and then we decided we didn't want to be in the same house with tenants. Things are just different. So we bought a house in Glenmare, and then we've probably been in that house a couple of years, and an opportunity came up to purchase a 4-plex in Glenmare. And in those 3 years from when we bought the house on 14th Street, it had gone up in value enough that I did what's called a 1031. A 1031 is where you trade a property. It has to be $1 more in value than the one you're selling, and you avoid capital gains and depreciation recapture. So the equity that I had in that 14th Street property bought me a 4-plex with no money out of my pocket, out of my savings. And so we still own it. I have not sold the property outright. So everything I've done has been a trade. So that's how I have parlayed into all the units that I have.
So it's interesting. I think we have a common theme here, guys, and that is the first property you buy, make sure you buy it as owner occupied, right? Get away from putting down 20%. That's exactly what I did. You know, me and my wife at that time when we first bought our place, and here's the crazy thing. If I ask you guys, what do you think a condo looks like? Most of you guys would say it looks like an apartment, right? Well, this particular property that we had, we bought it for $58,000. It was 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2-car garage, 3 levels. And initially, I was not going to buy it. I wanted to get a house, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Let's buy this place. Let's stay in it 1 year, turn around and rent it out. And that was my theme on the first property. Eventually, I bought multiple properties over the years. At one point, this was probably 2006 or 7. They had a product out here where you could actually buy investment property with as little as 5% down. And I want to be real with each and every one of you guys. So in 07, 08, you guys know what was going on at that time, right? Right? The recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. And I bought 2 properties. They were right in Buffalo Run, which is Commerce City Reunion. And I had sweet deals. The builder was actually giving me $10,000 a month to rent those units back to them. They were model homes. And I'm like, this is incredible, great deal. Within 3 months, he called me and said, Arthur, we're about to go belly up. I can't pay you anymore. And I'm like, did I just hear what I just heard? And I was like, I had no choice. So I let the properties go because my thing was there was no way I could afford $10,000 a month on these units when I knew I still had another 7 or 8 other units. Eventually, I let them go. I'm thinking I'm out to clear. Within 2 months, I had second mortgage. Remember I said earlier you could put down 5%? So I had a first 80%, 15% second. At that point, the second mortgage lien holders called me and said, hey, you still owe us $250,000. So I'm looking at my wife. I'm saying, okay, are we going to pay this $250 back that we don't own the homes anymore? Or are we just going to file bankruptcy? What are we going to do? And then all my friends told me, there's no way you're going to be able to file bankruptcy, Arthur. You make too much money. And I met this guy here. He told me who to go through, and I filed, not received. But no, I found a good lawyer. He took care of me. One thing I remember, he said, Arthur, you got to fall behind on all your debt. And I'm like, what? I had like 800 FICO scores. And the reason why I bring this up, guys, is because no matter what you go through in life, you have to be able to pick yourself up. And I knew right then and there, I was not going to let that situation define who I was going to be in life as I move forward. And from that moment on, it's been a blessing in disguise. And I'm kind of like you, Randy. I typically hold on to my properties. I did fix and flips, but for the most part, my goal is to pay off all my stuff so I can have residual income. So if we're in a market crisis like we are, and I'm only closing 5 or 6 deals a month, I'm not sweating, I'm not crying, I'm not stressing out because I have those rental properties I can fall back on, which is residual income.
What was your question again, Christian?
So, I mean, just to capitalize off what Arthur is just saying, do you see yourself staying more in the fix and flip game, or do you want to transition more towards holding your properties?
So we're kind of still doing both. Obviously, we know that we have to make money to eat, right? We can't. One day, hopefully, we'll be able to, live off of the cash flow that we're making off these properties. But right now, we're still trying to generate as much cash as we can. So then we can park that into the real estate investment, buy more rentals and stuff like that. So I don't think, we'll do more flips. We're buying still aggressively this quarter and next year, and we're not holding back. I'm not afraid to lose. I've lost last year. I lost $100,000 on one flip. I'm like, okay, we'll do another one, and we'll keep winning and we'll keep winning. But yeah, we'll only do that, and we'll keep generating cash just so we can accumulate more rentals, and then buy another rental, and then keep going. Want to add to that?
I'm good.
Most people would tell you that real estate's a long game, and doing flips on the side is great, but you want to own for the long term and get your tenants to pay that mortgage off for you. So I've got all mine paid off free and clear thanks to tenants, except for one property which is close, and I could if I wanted to, but the interest rate is so good, why pay it off? So I'm kind of holding on to that one temporarily, but you want the tenants to pay off your mortgage. It's awesome.
Arthur, when we were on the phone the other day, you were talking about 3 principles that you live off or you live your life by. Can you tell us what those principles are and how you were able to implement those into your life and why they're so important to you?
Yes, sir. So the 3 principles that I live by is staying humble, being persistent, and being resilient. And I'm going to kind of go through each one. The humble part is easy for me because I grew up in the projects. I didn't have anything. So as I became more successful in life, I've always had this feeling like if I was not humble, that God would take it away from me. So I've always been humble, and it's incredible that my kids are the exact same way. And it lets me know that me and my wife did a hell of a job raising them. The persistent part probably ties into my upbringing. I was pretty good in sports. I ran track in college, football, basketball. And if you're growing up in Gary, you got to remember, usually you're the youngest one trying to compete against the older people, right? And if you know anything about basketball, you heard that word I got next. So if you know that team is winning on a regular basis and you're losing, you're going to make sure you bring in the next 4 or 5. You're going to be competing. If you're 9 or 10 and going against 13 or 14-year-olds, you're going to be freaking persistent and want to win that game. And that helped me propel myself to my career from getting that job in Mount Bello to being the top 1% mortgage lender in the U.S. is because I didn't see anybody like me, but I was persistent enough that I wanted to be successful in life. And I didn't know truly what success looked like. Money doesn't make you successful. For me, what makes me successful is being happy. Surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, surrounding yourself with people that have a positive attitude in life. That's what brings me happiness in my life. And then the last thing is resilient. The one thing I think is missing in this generation for me was my grandparents. They taught me so much in life. I always say I have an old soul. I remember my granddad, he was born in 1900, and I'm pretty sure his parents or grandparents were slaves, and he had 3 first names, William, Henry, George. That sticks to me to this day. And for me to be resilient, when I lost my grandparents, that was tough. But the tough part was even when I lost my wife. The cancer 3.5 years ago. And, the crazy thing, ironic thing about that was I never knew that I wanted to make 7 figures in income, right? I did not know that, and probably until October of 2019, I talked to my wife, and I had my best years. I made 7 figures in 2020 and 2021. She passed away in April of 2020. And I remember me and her having a conversation, and I told her that I was going to make sure that her legacy lived on for as long as I was here on this earth. So me and my kids, we put a foundation in place, and what we do is we give out scholarships to student athletes of color. And we've given out the last 3 years, 3 scholarships of $6,000 over a 4-year period. So for me, being resilient and pushing through this market, I laugh at this market because for me, I've had a lot to deal with over my life. So thank you.
Thank you for being so open with us, Arthur, and sharing that personal information with us. We really appreciate you getting up there and being so open. So to transition from that, I know all of us know how hard it is to be a landlord. Can each of you guys give a horror story or just insight of what the nasty part of being a landlord is?
Chris, do we have any bad stories? You know, this is what I say though. I mean, I've been a landlord for 32 years. I'm not stupid. I wouldn't do that if it sucked. I mean, they're paying off my properties, and yeah, you know, once every 3 years I get a tenant that's kind of a real pain in the butt. But to this day, you know, your properties are insured. So if somebody does $5,000-$10,000 worth of damage, which I don't think that's happened, one was close, you can file a claim. That's what you have insurance for. That's not normal wear and tear. So yeah, I've had tenants where they were hard on the place as far as more clutter. You walk in and go, oh my gosh. And we see that as realtors walking in houses like, man, how they live like this. But to me, it's not damage. I remember one of the tenants where Chris back there used to live near. She always had like all this laundry in the living room, like on the floor and on her couch. Like, who's she doing laundry for? Granted, she had 3 kids, but it kind of irritated me for a while. And then I realized, and she never would really let me in very far, collect rent or something's leaking, whatever. But I finally realized all that laundry on the floor was protecting my carpet. I kind of got over it. So it has not been that hard, I think, to be a landlord. And but you got to roll with it. And you probably, you know, you kind of got to have the right personality. I mean, you got to, you know, I like most of my tenants. I try to get along with them. I always tell them, pay your rent on time and take care of my place, and we're going to be good. And I always tell them, good guy, bad guy. If you don't straighten up, I'm going to send my wife, and you don't want her over. Kind of works sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to teach you guys something here. When you become a landlord, whatever you do, make sure you don't feel desperate that you have to rent that place out when it becomes vacant. Let me say that again. If you have a unit and it's been on the market for 2 or 3 months and you feel like I'm just going to get it rented, I don't care. That's the worst decision you could ever make in your life. I'm going to tell you why. So the unit I told you guys about, the first one I bought, what, for $58,000? That was my baby. I love that unit. Still love that unit to this day. And I had a particular lady. It was on the market for 3 months. I couldn't rent it out. And there's one lady, I pulled her credit. It was like 580 FICO scores, collection accounts. But I already had these other properties. I had 2 properties that were vacant. 3 were vacant at the same time. I'm like, okay, I'm going to rent it to this lady. Within 2 months, she was passed through. I'm like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, I had a good friend who was a police officer, right? And this lady was a little crazy. I'm going to tell you, she scared me. I'm not going to lie. So I come up to the house with my police officer friend, but he didn't have his uniform on. He was kind of like undercover. And we walk up to the door. We knock on the door. I say, hey, excuse me, I'm just here to collect rent, blah, blah, blah. She said, you're not coming up in here. I said, what? She said, don't even try to step up in here. And I looked right at my friend. He said, I'll talk to you afterwards. He said, they got rights just like you, dog. I was like, ah. And then fast forward. I finally got her out. True story. A police officer, as I was cleaning up there, she destroyed the unit. She probably had about $15,000 worth of damage. And that police officer came up to me and said, hey, I just want to let you know that tenant that you had in the house, her son was just convicted of murder. We've been looking for him for like the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So once again, don't feel desperate to rent your place. That's my story.
Michelle has one again.
Remember the fourplex I told you all about? So basically, one unit, there's a lady downstairs, and I think she had about 100 cats. And then there was someone upstairs. The guy was like dying of cancer, but he still smoked all the time. And then there was another couple. I think they were like doing meth in the kitchen all the time, but they would like fight and tell on each other, and it was like the whole thing. So I did land up selling that, but I feel like I just kept attracting. I would get someone out of there, then I would attract another person because nobody wanted to live with these different people. So that was, but I didn't give up. So I sold that one, and now all of our other rentals have been great. Like we buy higher end, a little bit, something we'd live in. A few of them we did live in for a year or two, and then we rented it out. So after that fourplex, it's like if I would now with rentals, if I wouldn't live there, I wouldn't buy it. So that's how we kind of go with our rentals now, as if we would live there. So that's my story.
Yeah, just quality properties.
I think that's exactly been Chris and my motto was, and we want ours to look like we would live there when we fix them up. And so they're always in the right location. Even for rental properties, it's location, location, location.
Yes.
So mine are near schools and parks and conveniences and on and on.
I just want to add one thing. Even though me and Randy kind of think alike, there's nothing wrong with having an Airbnb, short-term leasing or anything like that. That's just when you guys decide what you want to do in terms of being a landlord, you just have to make sure you have a game plan in place. Like what's your game plan? Because remember with Airbnbs, some months they're killing it, other months they're not. And then with long-term rentals, for me, I want my money. I don't want to ever feel like there's 2 or 3 months that I got to figure out a way to rent it. So there's no wrong or right answer, and never get caught up in what everybody else is doing. Do what you feel that's comfortable for you and what you could afford. That's really what it comes down to.
I would also add that everything we've bought, other than the Phoenix property, has been multi-units, 2, 3, and 4. We were so poor when we started that if I'd have bought a single-family house and they went vacant for 3 months, it would have took us under. So with multi-units, a fourplex, what are the odds you're going to have all 4 vacant at the same time? In Greeley, that would never happen, I don't think. So anyway, buying that fourplex, I mean, we only had to be 2.5 units full, and it made the mortgage payment. So you're spreading your risk if you buy multi-units.
True.
Just a different way to go.
Michelle, can you touch on owning commercial properties? I know a little bit, you started renting a part of a salon when you first started doing hair, and now you own a spot where you rent to girls who do hair. So can you talk about owning commercial, your personal salon, and then the one you rent out, the units?
Yeah.
I don't even know why I'm up here.
He does all the work. I actually have 2 salons. So basically, the first one is like a traditional salon. I rent out the chairs. There's, it's one room. And then the second one is like a studio that me and Adrian had converted. It was like an old lawyer's office, I think, and we converted it into a salon. We put some sinks in there, and we rent out each unit to like lash girls, nail girls, just estheticians, and there's a couple hairstylists as well. But so basically, I run that just like a rental. I'm in my salon, hands-on doing hair, but I also, both the salons are more like rental properties. So I guess, I don't know what I was going with that, but we own the buildings and the salon business. So. Not really, because I just call this guy.
Yeah.
It's key, though, to have a good partner.
Yeah.
Adrian, can you tell us why you drive Lambos? We had talked about this, and you were telling us how you've made so many good connections with the people you surround yourself with, and through the avenue of supercars. I know Arthur's touched on that. He was talking about who you surround yourself with. So I'd like to hear from both of you guys about, the people you surround yourselves with and how it's elevated you in your businesses.
Yeah, I think, we get a lot of shit for driving Lambos because it's like, oh, it's flashy and all that, but they don't understand like the science behind it, right? We're trying to network with the higher level individuals. Like I would have never met Christian when I met you. How did we meet? Cars, right? Yeah. So it's like, your top agents like Arthur here, he drives, I'm not saying that you should drive a supercar, but there's definitely a lot of benefits that it gives you. It puts you in the circle. It's like almost like when you go out to dinner with all your supercar friends, you're in like a mastermind and you're just like connecting, and the frequency is higher, the conversations are different, right? And we did a podcast about that too. And Michelle, I don't know if you want to dive more deep with the supercars, because she drives one too. She has a McLaren. I have a Lambo. Yeah, do you want to dive a little bit more into that too?
No.
She's really good at explaining this stuff.
No, I guess I'll just say, even like we had shipped the Lamborghini to Arizona, and right away, I mean, we met so many people in Arizona, and they were just higher. Like he said, the conversations are different. It got us in rooms that we would never have been able to get into if we didn't show up in that supercar. So we've just been around, a lot. Everybody we're around is smarter than us, and that's what we want to be. We don't want to be the smartest people in the room. We want to learn. We want to absorb everything and learn. I mean, different businesses, and we want to be around people that know more than us. So the cars have helped us get there.
And I get referrals too. Like I always ask my clients, I'm like, where did you hear me? Like, where did you hear about us, right? Like, is it my Google ads? Is it my Facebook ads? Is it my Instagram ads? No, it's literally just word of mouth. Hey, it's Adrian. He's that kid that drives a Lambo. Yes, he'll buy your house, or he flips houses, whatever. It just gets people talking, right? And I think nowadays, to me, eyeballs is like the new currency. So the more attention you have, the more business you're going to have. And I don't know if do you have a different experience with your supercar? You have a McLaren too.
I was interested that you say that, and I'll be honest with you, I am not a car guy. I'll be totally honest with you. I am not a car guy. But for me, if you guys remember my story, that car, when I get in that car, it brings me back to where I came from, not having anything, and appreciating what God has taken me in my life. I've let my 18-year-old daughter drive. I let every one of my kids drive except for my oldest one. Well, he's 6'2". I think he might struggle a little bit. But no, I think for me, you bring up a very good point, Adrian. If you met me a year and a half ago, or even probably within the last year, I'm not a big, huge social media guy. And the biggest thing for me is I'm a pretty private guy, to be totally honest with you. But this young lady here, Priscilla, my marketing director / everything, she has helped me with my brand. And the first thing she said was, Mr. Brown, you got to let people know who you are. That means you got to show your car. I'm like, no, you got to show your car. And then when we sit down and we go through all the information in terms of who's tracking me, they really love my lifestyle. They love the car. They love my condo down. That's what this generation, that's what this next wave is about. So for me, like I did a post today with my car, and I basically said, if this car is going to allow me to connect with you in a way that's going to help you grow as a person and help you with generational wealth, then so be it. Let the car be the magic. So for me, it allows me to stay humble, believe it or not, but it also allows me to appreciate where I've came from.
Man, I'm going the wrong way. I just bought a $12,000 Jeep last week. And I really want a McLaren.
Yep, fake ass for it.
Adrian, so on your podcast, you guys are talking about how you took a recent trip to Tulum because of somebody you met with through the supercars. And you made a comparison to having a tour guide out there in Mexico to having a mentor in business. And you were saying, I would have been lost because I don't speak the language. I wouldn't know what's going on or where to go. I probably would have got kidnapped out there, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us the importance of having a mentor and what are good traits of a mentor? And then also touch on your one-on-one training too, if you wouldn't mind.
So yeah, me and Michelle, we went to Mexico for the first time. I finally got my passport. I mean, I had the passport when I came to the U.S., but I don't know what happened, expired, whatever. So I finally got it again. And then we went to Mexico for the first time out of the country together. How long ago was that? Like
a month ago.
Like a month ago, maybe? It was the best experience ever. If you guys have ever been to Tulum, it's beautiful. But anyways, going back to what he was saying, I don't know how to speak Spanish. I would have been lost because that place is like, it's chaos down there. And I don't know where to go. And then we met this guy. What was his name? I forgot. Alex. Yep, Alex. His name's Alex. And he was the best tour guide. He was like, let's go to the cenotes here. Let's go eat ceviche over here. He's like, I'll take you over here. And it was just the best time. It was like, you know what I mean? It was, if we didn't have him, we would have been lost. We wouldn't know where to go. We were just trying to figure it out. We'd make mistakes. We'd go to a restaurant that we didn't like, all the things. And I kind of put that in comparison with business because we all think we know what we're doing, but we really don't. right? We're just kind of guessing. So it's good to have a mentor to guide you to where you want to go, somewhere they've been. So if you want to learn how to flip houses, if you want to learn how to get more rentals, talk to somebody that's been there, done that, went through that path. Michelle, you want to talk?
No. Hmm.
Okay, guys. Well, right now I want to open us up to a Q&A right now. We have about 10 minutes for some questions. So if anyone has some questions for any of our panelists, I could walk the mic up to you and we can get those answered. Any takers? Chris Moser, she is the wife and other half of Randy Moser, so we could thank her for their real estate journey. That is the thing.
No, I'm the bad guy and the good guy, bad guy. But I never ever had to call Chris. So he was a great tenant. You said that your Airbnb is not going as well as it was.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've always been interested in maybe doing that in Phoenix. So could you tell me kind of what you're seeing in that market?
Yeah, what happened?
Well, Scottsdale's really getting down on their HOAs, like they're not letting them do as many Airbnbs, but we're in a house, so we're fine. However, like we had to drop the price really low to keep it occupied, so it's staying occupied, but we had to drop our prices where before, when a few years ago, I was probably getting like $12,000, $13,000 a month. Now I think it's like $2,000. Well, by the time we pay someone to run it, we pay cleaning fees. So I've been getting checks for about $2,000 a month versus $10,000 to $12,000. So yeah, right now it's not as.
Is the cut on an Airbnb from whoever's kind of taking care of it for you about 30%?
He's only taking, I think, 15%. And then Airbnb takes some, and then also our cleaning. And then there's just always little repairs. So yeah.
I just want to add to that. So I'm actually getting the place built in Tulum. So it'll be
Oh,
done in
Oh,
January.
nice.
And normally on average, that's going to be my only property I will ever Airbnb, right? And typically they do take about 30% off, right? And the one thing with Mexico guys is that you got to pay cash out there. There's no financing out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else?
My question is for Arthur. So you had mentioned at the beginning of your career, you started financing in I can't remember exactly.
Banking, yes.
Yeah. So in the community, you talked about like being a blackface was the original, like kind of opening you into that. What did you do in your career to kind of build your reputation in the Black and Hispanic community?
Close loans on time. In all seriousness, yeah, it was closing loans on time. But I learned something a long time ago when I first got into business. And one of my big agents said, Arthur, I want to tell you, in order for you to be successful in this business, the one thing you got to do is you have to make sure you're always honest with your agent and your clients. If you cannot close that loan, don't even take it for a minute. Because for me, most loan officers fail because they try to make something happen that's impossible because they don't want to tell the agent they can't get the deal closed because now the agent is going to send it to another LO and they're afraid that that LO might close it. So for me, I made sure that I was confident enough and I did my due diligence to just be around people who were older than me, smarter than me, because you got to remember I was 25, 26, and the average age, which is really still the case, a white male, probably 53, 54 in the mortgage industry. That's what it was. So I was intimidated, man, when I sat in those rooms when we had our meetings. I was truly intimidated. It would be times, man, I would go in my car, just sitting there for an hour trying to figure out where the hell I was going to get business from. But the Hispanic community, I'm going to tell you again, if it was not for your community, guys, I would not be where I'm at today. That's the God's truth, totally. So I am indebted to the Hispanic community forever.
This question is for Adrian. I know Adrian, he's a friend of mine. And you asked a question about how he makes his money, if it's flipping properties, buying and holding. But I know, knowing Adrian, I know another way he makes money. It's a huge portion. Maybe he can explain, is also wholesaling real estate. Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
He's holding out, huh?
He's
Okay,
shy.
who knows what wholesaling real estate is? There's quite a few. So that's actually probably, I'd say 70% of my business is wholesaling real estate. Because I do get, thankfully, I'm blessed to get a lot of leads that come in, and then a lot of them I can't take down because I'm too busy. Like right now, I'm doing 7 house flips, which is way too much for me because I'm running them all right now. But yeah, wholesaling is like my bread and butter right now. And if for you guys that don't know what it is, it's pretty much just getting a property under contract and then selling that contract to another person for a fee. And yeah, I do that probably once or twice a week. And Rob, actually, he's a great wholesaler. We've done a lot of deals together, and it's cool seeing him succeed in the wholesaling industry for sure.
So my question is to all of you guys. So while we're sitting back here and I'm super excited about what you guys are doing, and I've been in the business for 20 years, and I was blessed to work with an investor for 10 years of flip properties. Can you guys give an idea or let the rest of us here knows what were the main keys for you guys to be successful in all this flipping? Is it because it sounds like you're very handy too? So, and your license? You buy your own properties, Adrian?
It's all private, not licensed.
Oh, you're not licensed. Who's your realtor?
I have a realtor.
You're a realtor.
I have multiple realtors. I have a lot of connections, I guess, relationships.
So can you share with all of us, I know Randy is licensed, and so you have the background, but can you share with the rest of us, what is it that you need? So for anyone that is thinking, I have some savings, I want to get started, I'm flipping property or owning an Airbnb, can you guys give us an idea?
Go ahead, love.
I mean, for me, I just will like set a goal and I write my goals down every single day and whatever it is. If it's I'm going to buy a salon, that was kind of a goal for a few years. I'm going to buy my own salon, and I'd write it down and just kind of try to learn what I would have, like, do I have to save money or what I have to find or look at the numbers and just like set that goal and just focused on it until I got it.
But you had a boyfriend, a partner.
Yeah,
So that was one of your keys, right? You don't have to hire a crew that will come and do all the work. So that's what I would like for you guys to share. You have the right crew that will do the flipping. You have a great real estate agent that can find you these properties, right?
Right.
yeah.
So can you share a little bit of that so they know what we need in order to get into flipping?
Oh, in order to get into flipping.
Okay.
Oh, I think in order to get into flipping, I think you got to figure out how to get deals. I think the number one thing on flipping is how to find deals, right? And Rob is really good at finding deals, and so is me, right? So I think if you double down on, if you really do want to get into flipping houses, you got to know how to find deals. And after that, the rest will come. Because if you can make mistakes, if you find a good deal, you can make so many mistakes. And if you have enough room in the deal to make mistakes, you'll be fine. But if you're not buying a good deal, you'll be upside down real quick. I mean, you know this.
You gotta know your margin. You gotta know this is what I'm paying, this is how much I'm gonna put into it, and this is what it's worth after it's fixed up, and that's where that margin is.
Right. But yeah, there's so many things in flipping. Like, I can't really sit up here and tell you everything because there's so many things that you need. I read this book. It's called Who Not How, right? And that's kind of what I've kind of based my business on. So whatever I don't know what to do, like electrician, plumbing, this, I just figured out who can do it instead of me trying to figure out how I could do it, right? But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways, there's so many things in flipping houses, and it's definitely not easy for sure. I barely sleep sometimes. You want? Yeah.
So I'm going to answer the first part of your question and then go to the second part. Even though I don't speak Spanish, I've always had a team that was bilingual. So for me, I've learned a long time ago that if I'm not good at something, make sure I hire the people that are, right? And then you focus on what you're good at, and then you build around that. So that's what I did to become or be successful. I'm going to talk to the people here that if you're buying your house for the first time, if you're not a homeowner, and this is so hard for people to understand this, but once again, it goes back to you having a plan in place. And I tell anybody and everybody, that first place that you're buying, look at it as being your first investment. Let me say that again. The first place that you're buying, that's going to be your investment. You're staying in it 1 year, you're buying it owner occupied, and then you're renting it out and you're going on to your next property, right? That's how we all did it. And the rest is kind of up to you. My oldest son, he owns over $1 million in real estate. He's 33 years old. He followed the plan. He went Chapter twice, Greg. Chapter twice. And then he went and refinanced it, and he has 3 properties now. And he followed the plan. So, and then the people who actually own a home, who want to become a landlord, this is the easiest thing, guys. I always pose a question to my homeowners. How much do you really love your house right now? Because if you don't have 20% to put down, and honestly, guys, it's really more like 25 now. The rates suck, so it's really more like 25. But if you don't have 20 or 25% to put down, have you thought about maybe renting your current home that you live in and buy the next property owner occupied? It's a thought. And normally I close 5 to 6 deals a year by just sending out an email to my clients saying, how much do you really love your home right now? And they giggle and laugh and call me and we talk about it. Next thing you know, they're buying the next property. Now they have 2 properties. Both of them, they bought it with owner occupied money.
I think what's got me where I'm at is I usually don't take no for an answer. I'm pretty confident in myself, so nothing usually gets in my way. You know, I've always wanted to succeed at whatever I do. I don't think anything can stop me if I put my mind to it, my head to it, whatever. But and I'm pretty competitive at sports. I always want to win, gracefully, humbly. But I'm just a competitive person. So whatever I set my mind to, I'm gonna succeed. And that is surrounding yourself with people that maybe do what you do. I don't know everything. I'm constantly asking Steve Baker questions. Fortunately, we sit near each other. So he doesn't know it, but you know, a mentor isn't always someone that you've asked to be a mentor. Sometimes, I mean, Steve's kind of been a mentor to me, and he doesn't even know it, you know?
Right.
And it's just being around people and soaking it up, right? So.
Well, guys, feel free to give them a round of applause for their awesome answers. If you guys want to connect with them more, this will end our portion of the panel section of our event today. So connect with them after, get in contact with them, and feel free to talk to them.
Christian.
For what?
You see, like, ended.
I'm not saying.
I guess I didn't answer your last question.
Oh.
My answer is pretty much just never give up. You know, I know sometimes we're having a bad day, a bad month, bad year, but still get up the next day and then just keep working on yourself and improve yourself and hone your skills. I think this is the time for all of us to be honing our skills. So educating yourself and getting better and better and better. So, you know, when the market does get better, we'll be ready. Yep.
Thank you.